Well, hello, and welcome to this week's episode of SportsDay Rangers. I'm John Blake.
And I'm Evan Grant.
And the Rangers are 2/3 of the way through their 9-game road trip to several different time zones, 3 to be exact. And they've split the first 3 games in Houston and Colorado. And starting tonight, we'll finish the road trip up with the team with the worst record in the major leagues, the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim.
Club is 24-25 as we reach the 50-game mark with the series opener in Anaheim, and just about to reach the 1/3 point of the season when they get home to face Houston. But no team has taken the AL West and run with it, John. So the Rangers sit in second place behind the A's, just, I believe, 2 games back.
1 game back as of today, but the Rangers have... they've survived with injuries. Corey Seager went on the IL this week. They're still missing Wyatt Langford and Josh Smith. And Brandon Nimmo came out of yesterday's game in Colorado with a hamstring injury. But the team has seemed to be pretty resilient to this point. We'll talk about that in just a minute.
Our guest on this week's podcast takes us back to 1996 again. It's Jerry Narron, who was the third base coach on that team that won the AL West title and would later go on to manage the Rangers in 2001 and 2002, and spent over 50 years in the game.
And on the archives in Arlington, we'll look back at a historic moment for one of I think, both of our favorite players, Shin-Soo Choo, when he broke the home run record for an Asian-born player, since shattered by Shohei Ohtani.
You can reach out to each of us on X with any Rangers questions or comments. I'm at Evan_P_Grant, and he is sans any underscores, just at Ranger Blake.
So, Evan, you're kind of on assignment. You're taking a few days of respite here between series with the Astros, and but you're following the team from afar. I'm sure you witnessed the Rockies series. It just came to a conclusion on Wednesday, and interesting series. But over the last 4 games, the Rangers have scored 29 runs. They've hit over 330 in their last 3 games, and they seem to be doing it with a lineup of Andrew McCutchen and Justin Foscue and Ezekiel Duran. And all of a sudden, Jake Burger is now tied for 3rd in the American League with 33 RBIs. So what do you make of this?
Well, I can tell you this, John. I did, on my assignment here in Savannah, I did run into some Denver sports royalty twice, shared elevators with John Elway. He didn't seem too concerned about how the Rockies and the Rangers series was going. But he's got his own issues with the Broncos. But listen, I think that we're seeing, I don't know exactly what to make of this because the Rangers face a lot of lefties in Colorado, and Jake Burger had another big series. Ezekiel Duran had a big series. Justin Foscue had a huge series. And so I don't know if that is because it was lefties. I don't know if it was because it was in Colorado. I don't know if it was just because it was Colorado lefties. But we are seeing the hot version of Jake Burger again. The last 8 games, I think he was hitting 450. And he had 5 walks and 6 strikeouts. That's a lot of walks for Jake in a short period of time. So maybe there's a little bit more restraint. I don't know. It's hard to figure him out just because he is so streaky. But when he's going good, the Rangers need to take advantage of it. And I look at this first 2/3 of this road trip and say, okay, you went 3-3. You need to come home from this road trip at 500 or better. You need to go and win a series in Anaheim. If you do that, you've had a 3-city road trip, gone 5-4 without Corey Seager, without Wyatt Langford, without Josh Smith, with Mackenzie Gore going short in a start. And you've still got the ability to come home and have a week against both Houston and Kansas City before the end of May where you can really make some hay and get yourself, a little bit of a bulge above 500. So I feel like the Rangers haven't lost this opportunity. I think there's still an opportunity for them. don't know that it's possible to pass judgment on the offense. Still, I mean, it's not the offense that we expect to see all year. Um, I've been encouraged by some developments. Look, I hope this is the fact that Justin Foscue is getting some opportunity to play and he's doing what he needs to do in the major leagues, which is rake as a hitter. I hope that portends for long-term success. I hope Berger's hot streak can carry the Rangers for a bit longer. And I'm very pleased with what I've seen from Ezekiel Duran this season. He just looks like a different hitter. So, um, I guess my overall feel is, it's certainly not discouraging, but I think there's more work to be done over this little stretch against teams with poor records.
And have you been impressed with, Skip Schumaker basically has tried everything, the lineup combinations on the offensive side. Quickly seeing the Kumar Rockers' first inning struggles and going with an opener in the game on Tuesday in Denver. That seemed to work out great with Kumar Rocker throwing 7 2/3 shutout innings. But Skip isn't afraid to try different things and try them fairly quickly.
No, I don't think he's going to be reactive. He's going to be ahead of the curve on this stuff, and I think he has tried that to the point where I think the Rangers have used 8 different cleanup hitters partly because they've been forced to, but he's not going to sit around and wait for guys to try and get into a groove. He's going to try and win games. There have been some interesting moves at the top of the lineup to try and spur the offense a little bit. To make best use of Brandon Nimmo since he's been the most consistent hitter all year. I do think that everything. I don't think that everything Skip has done has gotten immediate results, but I think everything he's done has been done with the idea we've got to do what we can right now to help a team that's a little bit A, underperforming, and B, missing some of its key parts.
And the defense. Obviously, the loss in Denver the other night, defensive miscues by Josh Young and Ezekiel Duran played a big role in that. And Young, who is obviously, as we speak today, 4th in the American League in batting at 309, took full credit, took full responsibility for that. But it doesn't seem like it's quite. We got used to really good defense last year. And again, some of the guys who were responsible for that are no longer here. But what do you make of that? Skip came in with wanting to hit the fundamentals. And you think, watching them early on and all the work they do, early in the day and everything, you would think they'll be able to clean that up.
Yeah, I don't have a great answer for that right now on the defensive element. I do think that, there were some issues at second base early on, that Josh Smith struggled a little bit there. What's been mystifying is how bad they've been at handling pop flies. And, Josh has not played a great defensive third base. All I know is that he's aware of it and he wants to address it. And those are the things that you hope over the course of this year just get better. I don't have a real logical answer for it because Skip's a stickler for fundamentals, and I know that Corey Ragsdale works really hard with these guys, and he's really diligent, and he's a real encouraging infielding coach. But I don't know why the ball has found the Rangers in awkward positions this year, and I do think that they will. I just don't think Josh has approached the ball as cleanly as he has in the past, and I think the Rangers will work on that a little bit. Particularly for me, it feels like in charging some of those balls, that they've just eaten him up, and I think the Rangers will work on that a little bit.
And last this week, I think moving to the bullpen a little bit, Jacob Latz has just been unbelievable. 2 inning saves. On Wednesday, pitching the last 2 innings, getting the win. Is this sustainable? He had a little off. He had some time off. They'd had him down a little bit. But is this something we're going to see all year, or do you think? Obviously, they probably like to get into a situation where they had, a steady, consistent setup man in the 7th and in the 8th, and then you get the Latz in the 9th. But not the way it's working right now.
No, and I think to Jake's credit, look, I mean, he wanted to start and he built himself up as a starter, and they haven't lost that length ability. I do think it's going to be hard to. You're not going to ask him to go out and pitch 2 innings every time out, but I think he's now got 3 2-inning saves this year. In the last 5 years, as far back as I had looked, there's only been one season where anybody had more than 3 2-inning saves. David Bednar had 4 in 2022. It's hard to call this sustainable because I don't think you're going to ask him to do this 15 times over the course of the year. But I do think that it gives them a different level of a weapon late in games when they do have, if they've gone several games without Lats, they do have the ability to ask him to pitch 2 innings. I think they'd much prefer to have him pitch 1 inning, 2 or 3 nights occasionally in a row, rather than him not be able to pitch, unless the starter's going to throw you a complete game or you're going to win a walkover. But yeah, I think he does add a different element there, and I think he's so eager to have a important role on this team. I don't think he cares if he pitches 1 or 2 innings. He's got the right amount of ego, right? He wants to have an important role on this team, but he doesn't care what he has to do it.
Well, we'll see what happens. The Rangers are in Anaheim, are set up with the top 3 in their rotation as long as Mackenzie Gore is ready to pitch on Sunday, and we'll see tonight if Jacob deGrom can get that elusive 100th win. So, but you're right. I mean, they need to come home on this road trip with a winning record and get to 500. That would be the first thing. As this division continues to mystify and Mariners can't get it going, a lot of injuries, and the Astros, same thing. So Rangers are right there. Well, I guess we'll see what happens here. But I don't think anybody expect it's been 500 or so for pretty much the first 2 months of the season.
Right. And I'm sure that frustrates fans, and I've heard from a number of fans that are frustrated about the offense over the past 2 years. But look, I think that if this team gets above 500 by the end of May, that's an accomplishment. June is going to be a little bit of an uphill battle just because of the amount of games the Rangers play on the road. I think they're only home for 9 games. And so you want to hold your own there. But after that, you've got a July, August, and September where you've got a tremendous home field advantage. You've really cleared the hardest part of your schedule. And if the Rangers are in position, I expect to see them surge then.
So we'll see what happens here, and when we talk again about the team. And for now, though, our guest this week is Jerry Narron. Has had an incredible career over 50 years in baseball. Was the starting catcher for the New York Yankees in 1979, the night after Thurman Munson died in a plane crash. And I was at that game because I was working for the Orioles. They were playing the Orioles in New York, and it was incredible. It was so moving. But a long association with the Rangers, going back to being a coach in the 90s on those division-winning teams, managed the club for a couple of years in 2001 and 2002, and then came back as a special assignment scout, and his family has a long relationship with Josh Hamilton. So we'll catch up with Jerry next. Well, we're very happy to have as our guest for this week's episode of SportsDay Rangers, Jerry Narron. A great connection with the club's organization. Just a little background, which Evan loves when I give background. He played 8 years in the big leagues with the Yankees, Mariners, and Angels. Then was a minor league manager in the Baltimore system for 5 years. Went to Baltimore as a coach for Johnny Oates. Came with Johnny to Texas in 1995 as the third base coach, and then was the when Oates stepped down in May of 2001. Jerry took over as manager, managed the club through the 2002 season, and then went on and managed the Reds 2004, 2005, and has been a coach for a number of teams, including most recently the Angels with Ron Washington in 2024 and 2025. Over 50 years in professional baseball. And Jay, thanks for taking a little time to talk to us today.
I appreciate you having me on. It's great to see you guys.
So let's just start with with your relationship with Johnny Oates and Doug Melvin and coming to Texas. What were your initial? You were coming in after the '94 season. You guys had the replacement players right away in the spring of 1995, and then of course the team took off and won 3 division titles. So, what were your initial thoughts coming here?
We were looking forward to it. John, we were in Baltimore. We would have loved to have stayed in Baltimore, but Peter Angelos, new owner, came in there and wanted to make a change, which ownership always does. But we knew Texas had a lot of talent, and it was just a matter of getting a winning approach in there with different people in there and see what could happen. 95, we did okay. And then 96, it was just, a really great year for us.
Jerry, I during your time with the Rangers as a coach on the staff, you got the everyday exposure, obviously, to Johnny that fans didn't and saw what he did in the clubhouse. And I don't think that this generation of fans has enough appreciation for what Johnny did in terms of building relationships in that clubhouse. But can you give a little insight into what it was like when he managed the club and how he managed a lot of disparate personalities?
I think the biggest thing is that it was all from his heart, very sincere man. There was nothing phony about what he ever did with the players. He wanted the players to be successful. And I think people can see when people are sincere and it's not just, a phony situation. And Johnny was just a great communicator one-on-one, I think more so than the whole club at one time. We didn't have that many team meetings over there as a group, but one-on-one, he spent a lot of time with guys, and everything was very sincere what he had to say and do with these guys.
So, Jerry, you got a chance to work with Pudge Rodriguez. You handled the catching as a former catcher. It was fairly early in Pudge's career. He'd been in the big leagues 2 or 3 years. And I don't know how much Pudge needed, but what were your observations back then that we had in Pudge Rodriguez?
I think it's pretty simple. Good coaches know when to coach and when to stay out of the way. And this guy did not need fixing. He's if not the best defensive catcher of all time, he's right there, 1 or 2. I've got him number 1. I love Johnny Bench, nothing against JB at all, but Pudge, before he broke his thumb on Mo Vaughn's bat, I never saw him make a bad throw. I mean, everything was on the money. I kind of compared it to somebody like Nolan Ryan fastball with Greg Maddox command, and that's the way he threw the ball. But we would, in spring training, just messing around throwing. Well, we wouldn't mess around, but we were, getting into the season, getting ready. Without a batter up there, he would throw with like low 1/7 to second base, and you just don't do that and be accurate with it. But the big thing for me was just let him go and let him play. And a lot of people over the years have said, some things about working with pitchers, that type thing. Well, I tell you what, one thing pitchers never had to worry about when he was back there was having to worry about controlling the running game.
Correct.
I remember one year with Rick Helling, I think Bill Hasselman didn't catch Helling a whole lot, but there was something like 10 stolen bases with Hasselman back there, and there was like 1 maybe with Pudge. And Rick Helling was like a 1.55 to the plate. I mean, he changed the game defensively. He just changed what other clubs were trying to do. And there's been very few guys do that.
And that is the thing sometimes we think about, we as coaches and managers, sometimes we get into this thing about worrying about what guys don't do well instead of what they do well. And did you kind of make that determination with Pudge? Look, This is his strength is throwing, his strength is blocking balls, his strength is shutting down the running game. If he's not the greatest game caller on the planet, it doesn't matter because he's not going to give up extra bases.
Well, for one thing, with the game calling, when in that ballpark and in that era, you were going to give up runs. It didn't matter who was pitching. And so, that game calling part, that I think that was a little overrated with him. But for me, just the intensity this guy brought every day. You're talking about catching 100, 150 games a year, and we knew what the heat was like. That's why you got a new ballpark across the street. And this guy posted every day. And Johnny wouldn't DH him. Johnny was afraid of DHing, with a catcher. With only 2 catchers, he didn't want to lose a guy. And I would stay on Otzi all the time. Just DH the dude, man. But Otzi kept running him out there behind the plate. But, a great, great career. I am very fortunate to have been around him. And Texas was lucky to have this guy for as long as they had him.
So the 1996 club, and you talk about talking to Johnny. Johnny playing his starters, his 9 guys every single day. That was the one thing about 96. Unless somebody got hurt or whatever. And we had a fairly deep bench with Damon Buford, Warren Newson, Kurt Stillwell. We had guys, Craig Worthington, who started opening day and got the big win for us when Palmer was hurt. But that was kind of the way Johnny did it, right? I mean, he stuck with those guys, and he played them. They were in the lineup every single day, and I think those guys enjoyed it.
I'm sure they did. You didn't have all the medical staffs doing all the workload management like they do today, so the guys played. And Johnny believed in playing them. He believed in a set lineup. He thought a set lineup had you're on deck, you're talking to the guy that's in the hole behind you, you're on deck, or the guy's getting ready to go up to bat. There's a lot of communication there, and Johnny just believed running guys out there as much as he could in the same order. Also, not only playing them every day, but keeping that same lineup out there too.
And late in the season, when the club, had that little lost a 9-game lead and everything, do you think that had any effect that those guys had played so much to that point in the season? I mean, they rallied and came back, but it got a little hairy there at the end.
I don't think that did. I think it's just really the first time these guys had ever really been through it. And it's when you haven't won before and you're grinding it to win, that's as much as anything. I think that I don't think the playing every day had as much to do with it as just their first time going through it.
Jerry, you have been around the game 50 years. John did leave out one small detail of your career, that the night that Thurman Munson passed away in an airplane crash, you ended up being the Yankees catcher that night. So you have a long, long tenure in the game as both a player, coach, and a manager. And I'm in one of these phases right now where I'm very down on analytics, just because I feel like we talk about the game. Skip Schumaker said the quiet part out loud the other day, and I love Skip. I love what he's brought. But he said, right now it's a game of on-base percentage and slug. And that may be true, but it leaves out the idea of hitting. And it just feels like some of the game's basic elements are not as involved anymore. Do you feel the same?
100% agree with Skippy. One thing that people don't take into account is there are outs that can be productive, and a strikeout is not a productive out ever. And that's one part of the game that's missing. You rarely see a man on second base and nobody out, and not just trying to hit a weak ground ball to the right side, but guys used to try to drive the ball to right center or right field or deep center to try to move a guy. And you hardly ever see that today. And I think you get in the postseason where you're facing good pitching every night and you're trying to scratch and claw for every run you can get. You're not going to go up there and hit a bunch of home runs and win ball games. Yeah, that home run's going to win you a game, but you need a productive out once in a while, and you're not getting it from a lot of guys.
When runs are at a premium, for sure, 100%.
But put the ball. The teams aren't. They're saying a strikeout's no different than a flyout, and that's not the case every time.
What stands out to you most about that 96 experience?
I think from day one of spring training, things usually were a little bit different back in the 90s and before, where you would have the pitchers come in for 5 or 6, 7 days, and then the position guys would come in. Well, 95, there was no spring training for major league players. I mean, we got started late, the whole bit. 96, we had every one of our players, every position player was there before their reporting date. And that was the first time I signed in 74. That was the first time in my career I had ever been with a club where everybody was there before their reporting date. And you could just tell something special was, gonna happen for us just on that spring training.
And one last one for me in 96, you mentioned that, and I've done this a long time. That was one of the more fun clubs I've ever been around, just in terms of how tight, and I'm not going to try to compare it to today and the way the players are today. You're well, but that team was so tight, and they really had each other's backs. They'd hang around the clubhouse after the game and discuss the game. It was everybody. It was Will Clark and Ken Hill and Mickey Tettleton and Rusty Greer and the young guys feeding off of the veteran players. It really was a very special group.
Well, anytime you got a club with Will Clark on it, you know that there's going to be there's going to be some unity there, or he's going to get on somebody's case. But Will was that straw that stirred that drink in there, and he stirred it really, really well. And then
He brought edge, yeah.
And then you had the younger guys like Rusty and Dino. And Mickey Tettleton. Mickey made a huge difference having Mickey Tettleton there. I mean, Mickey's a pro. And, and then with Pudge and Juan pretty much did his own thing. But if you're driving in 140 runs and hitting 40-some bombs, you could do your own thing. And the year that Juan had that year, and then again in 98 when he won the MVP again, I think it was, just 2 fantastic years. And the postseason Juan had that year, just the division series, unbelievable. And, I look back on that division series that year, I thought we were better than the Yankees. And we had a lead in every one of those ball games. If we would have won that series, George Steinbrenner would have torn that team apart. Joe Torre would have been fired. Derek Jeter would have probably been playing in Oakland or somewhere. But them beating us is really what got them over the hump, I think, because we were better than Baltimore. I think they played Baltimore next. But we scored early in every one of those ball games, and we could not score late. I don't even know if we scored a run 7th, 8th, or 9th inning in any of those ball games. But it's a shame we didn't beat them, because I really believe in my heart we were better than them. The 98 team, 99 teams we had, I thought were really, really good ball clubs. Those clubs would walk through baseball today. And I believe that. But, we're facing the Yankees in the first round of the playoffs those 2 years. And the Yankees, those 2 years, may have been the best clubs of all time. They would have matched up with anybody ever in the history of the game.
Jerry, I want to move forward just a little bit to your tenure as manager. And I think your tenure as manager is somewhat underappreciated, partly because the Rangers were going through a rather transient time where they weren't sure whether they wanted to rebuild or what they wanted to restock or what they were doing. And Alex Rodriguez was at the center of all of that. But I remember the spring of 2002, your 1 year here as the manager from start to finish. Just what a strong presence you had with Michael Young. In particular, I believe there was a day where you chewed him out on the field and basically chased him off the field at spring training, but you also fought very hard for Michael Young's place in the organization. What did you see in Michael? Why were you hard on him? And what was your goal there?
I knew how good this guy could be, and I did not want to see him do anything by just going through the motions. And what you're talking about, it was a bunt. And he half-assed it, and I didn't like it. And it was because I liked this guy so much. I really thought this guy could play. And I had put my rear end out there saying this guy is a major league player. I had the opportunity to see Michael the year before in '01 when we brought him up. As a matter of fact, we bring him up. I told Frank Catalanato, "You ever play right field? You're gonna play a deep second base. You're going out to right field because Michael Young's going to get a chance to play." But you cannot quantify intangibles. But if you see it and you've been around the game, you know when guys have it. And this guy was a winner from day one. You could just see it. And when Buck got the job, I even talked to Buck. I was coaching with the Red Sox. I said, "You can hit Michael Young ninth if you want to, but this guy you can win a world championship with this guy." And I told Buck that in '03.
Michael has. I think one other thing that gets kind of overlooked now is that, Michael moved to shortstop in '04 and then eventually third base. But in '01 and '02, when he came up, and obviously in '03 when he made the All-Star team for the first time, this was a defensive level second baseman that we hadn't seen in, other than the Roberto Alomars for a while. He has, I believe Michael has some belief that his Hall of Fame case would have been stronger if he'd remained at second base his whole career.
Oh,
Agree
absolutely.
or disagree?
And, with Robbie Alomar around, he may not have won some gold gloves, but he would have gotten a lot of votes he was a gold glover. I mean, with Robbie's, kind of like Pudge is behind the plate. That's what I think of Robbie Alomar. But I tell you what, Michael Young was really close to being that level defender. And you have A-Rod at short and Michael Young at second. Doggone, that's as good as it gets defensively.
How hard was it A-Rod, you bring up Alex. I loved watching the guy play every day. He posted, he may have been the most outstanding player we've ever had on the field here. I mean, what he could do every single day. The rest of it, the drama off the field, I get all that. But what would you say about the time you managed Alex?
Alex is one of the greatest players of all time, not just with the Rangers. This dude is you can say whatever you want to, but this guy, you just check the numbers, and they're unbelievable. Alex came to the ballpark every day with the attitude that he was the 26th guy in the clubhouse trying to make the club. Alex busted his rear end every day. Nobody can say this guy didn't come prepared and ready to play every day. And Alex loved the game. Alex, loved the history of the game. He loved watching other games. I'd be in the clubhouse sometime after games, and he's sitting in there watching a game on TV on the West Coast, and his fiance was sitting outside. I wanted to kill him one night because his fiance had been sitting out there about an hour or so. But he was in there. There was a game on TV. He was watching it. But, you can say whatever you want to. You can hate the dude if you want to. The fans, he's as polarizing a player he's probably ever been. But talent-wise, boom, it was right there. I had a player one time ask me, he said, "I think, is Alex making out the lineup? I see you give Alex a lineup." I was giving Alex a lineup with Alex's name in there and Alex's name not in there, trying to get him to take a day off sometime. And it got to a point I'd just mess with him, with his name in there and his name not in there. But as for Alex trying to make up the lineup and everything, he didn't do that. He would give me his opinion on a lot of things. He probably gave Tom Hicks his opinion on a lot of things. He probably gave John Hart his opinion on a lot of things. But I tell you what, the guy posted. And I love the dude. A lot of stuff I'd like to say, "Alex, what the heck are you doing?" And I even told him in '02, I said, "Alex, this game is going to be over for you before you know it as a player. Right now you think you're going to play forever. Well, it's going to come quick." I said, "Don't try to be the owner. Don't try to be the GM. Don't try to be the manager or coach. Just enjoy being a baseball player." And if he would have done that, he might have hit 800 home runs. But I tell you what, man, in the ballpark in Arlington, if he would have stayed there, he'd have probably hit 60 multiple years. And everybody dogs him up with the Yankees time. He's a better defender than Derek Jeter. I love Derek Jeter. Derek Jeter is one of my favorite all-time opponents. And I love Jeter. But I tell you what, Alex was a better shortstop than Jeter was.
All very salient points. What was it? But what
Probably
was
not
it like?
popular points, but they're points. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
But what there was that other dynamic that you had to manage. You had to manage the idea that this was a guy who also was talking to ownership, that was talking to the GM, and like you said, just enjoy being a player. Did that ever cause any friction for you?
It really didn't for me because I'm smart enough to understand when a guy's making $250 million and nobody else is even making $100 million. If I call Tom Hicks and Alex calls Tom Hicks, he's going to get back with Alex first. I mean, I had no problem with that. But I just love being able to write his name in that lineup every day. And, I didn't know exactly. I was trying to mix it up a couple times, tried to hit him third or fourth. I wanted him to come up first inning. Bobby Brady got all over me one night because I hit him fourth, I think. But y'all remember Bobby. But he would come in. He wasn't afraid to give his opinion when he came in to talk with me. But Alex, the player, absolutely love him.
The last one for me here, Jerry, and I'm going fast forward now. A lot of people don't remember that you did come back and work for the Rangers again in a special assignment kind of role that JD asked you to do in 2008, and that was the time. That was at the time that the Rangers had traded for Josh Hamilton, and your brother Johnny was with the club during our whole World Series run there as kind of Alex's confidant and assistant hitting coach. What was your relationship or your family's relationship with Josh?
Well, first of all, John Daniels did his homework on Josh Hamilton. I had been Josh's manager in Cincinnati in 07, and he had a little trouble there, not relapses, but, being his first year in the big leagues. But John called me over a 2-week period. He probably called me 7 or 8 times just wanting to talk about Josh. And I'll tell you one thing JD did was he was prepared. He did his homework, and you can tell what he did after he got the ball club there. I don't know what, I just thought what JD did, I could tell there was going to be something special happen there over the next few years. My special assistant part of it, I wish I would have done more. I wish I would have been involved more. That was probably my fault as much as anything, but I would have gone to the minor leagues for them. I'd have done whatever they wanted me to do. It wouldn't have mattered. But I did want to be. I had a son in high school at the time, and I wanted to stay home as much with him as I could. But I did go to spring training, and would come in once or twice a year or whatever. But I was impressed with JD before I ever knew JD with what he did with Josh Hamilton, the homework that he did.
Visiting with Jerry, the winter of 08 after the trade, I went up to North Carolina to talk to Josh, but I spent an afternoon with Jerry and Johnny. And that was the one thing that Jerry had said over and over again at that point in time, is that the Rangers had really done their homework. They were really prepared on what they needed to do when they made this trade.
Well, Johnny had a relationship with Josh since he was about 6 years old. Johnny's son was the same age. They played together on a youth basketball team. Johnny coached Josh in a fall baseball league. And Johnny told me about this kid. He said, "You got to see this kid. When you get home, come see this kid." So I go see them play. It was a Saturday, and I come up to the ballpark, and there is a left-handed catcher for Johnny's team catching. It's Josh Hamilton. This dude's catching. I mean, you got a guy that could be 1-1 as a pitcher or a position player, and my brother, this smart dude, had him behind the plate catching. What's this all about? But it was easy to see. I mean, when guys can really play, it's easy to see. Josh is a guy that could have probably stepped right in. He signs as a high school kid. He'd have probably gone to spring training the next year as a minor leaguer, but he could have probably been up in the big leagues at 19 and done, held his own really, really well with Tampa.
Well, we could talk all day about a lot of different things. Jerry, again, has been in baseball 50 years, and always great to catch up and talk about the different Ranger connections. And hopefully, we will see you later this summer as we honor the '96 team. So we appreciate the time today.
No, I love it. I appreciate it. John, I love you. Devin, Evan, you know, you a little bit, uh, but no, I love you, Evan. I appreciate all the bad advice you gave me when I was managing.
Yeah, thanks. I've done that for 25 years now.
Well, just an amazing conversation with Jerry Narron. And again, he touches a lot of Ranger buttons over the years, and always good to catch up with him. So on this week's Archives in Arlington, we're going to go back to May 26, 2018. And sometimes this player was much maligned as a Ranger, but ended up playing 7 seasons in Texas. Shin-Soo Choo hit his 178th career home run, the most ever by an Asian-born player. He broke the record held by Hideki Matsui. As the Rangers it was a walk-off actually, a walk-off win for the Rangers. They beat the Royals in 10 innings, 4-3. Now, of course, that record has been smashed by Shohei Ohtani, 2024. He's up to 288 home runs. And Ohtani has a 36.5 career WAR. But you look at Choo's 16 years in the big leagues, 34.7 career WAR, an 824 OPS, 1,652 games, 218 home runs. Evan, is his legacy in Texas, he was a good player, probably not. He was coming off a great year in Cincinnati when the Rangers signed him to that 7-year deal after the 2013 season. But he did have a 792 OPS with Texas, but only an 8.6 WAR, so a lot of his WAR was done early in his career with Cleveland. But what do you make of Shin-Soo Choo's career in Texas? What would you say will be his legacy?
Well, I think the first year, which is when Choo took most of the criticism, he underachieved. And I think I still remember him saying the some point in time during his second year in Texas that he had a conversation with his wife at the All-Star break, and she urged him to just be himself, and that Choo was trying to live up to the contract instead of living up to who he was. And he was incredibly honest and open about that. And I think what we saw was a player who really, his wife deserves a lot of credit for that conversation. Because after that, I thought Choo was incredibly productive. He became a very respected leader in the clubhouse.
Yes, he did.
I think he became very popular with fans after that first year. And his legacy in Texas is a strong one as far as I'm concerned. I think when he finished his career, particularly after the 51 or 54 game on base streak, club record for that. I think he etched his name in the Rangers history as a very important contributor. In the 15 and 16 when this team won division titles, Choo was at the forefront offensively.
And he was bothered, had some injuries during his career, but yeah, I remember like you do when he got here. And, he didn't have a huge, the Japanese media for Darvish or Ohtani, I mean, it's overwhelming. But the Rangers had 5, 6, 7 Korean writers that would cover the team all the time, especially in those early years. We did some of our home games on Korean radio. There's a big Korean community in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I think you're right. I think he had he put a lot of pressure on himself to try to live up to that contract in 2014. But like you said, he was a great teammate. He was so respected. And by the end, he was last year was again 2020 in the COVID year, and so he never really got I don't think the send off that we wanted him to. That courageous last hit he got in that final game in 2020. but he'll be remembered, I think, as certainly one of the greatest Korean-born players to ever play the game. And he set that record, which I think if you said right now, who held the record that Ohtani had, who Ohtani broke for home runs by an Asian-born player, I don't think a lot of people would probably recognize Shin-Chu Chu. So that's this week's Archives in Arlington. And with that, we want to thank you for joining us on this week's episode of SportsDay Rangers.
Take care, everybody. You know where you can find us. You can find me on X at Evan_P_Grant, and John remains at Ranger Blake, and we will be back soon.
Enjoy the rest of your assignment, Evan.
Thanks, John.